Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at the fourth short story in this collection called When the Sea Kings Away by Fritz Leiber. To do it as we've been doing a deep dive into it now. It's only the second that I've gone back and reread for you folks. The first two I did a couple of years ago when I did 5 short stories in this collection for you folks in the first couple of years of this channel, back when I was either doing things that I've read new for this channel or things that I had read 15, 20 years ago and hadn't gone back and reread to have a more current take on it. I stopped doing that, so I only did 5 short stories in this extensive collection for you folks. The first short story in this collection is The Cloud of Hate. It's about 16 pages long. And then the next short story in this collection is 47 pages long. It's called Lean Times in Lankhmar. It's the title of this collection. The second collection in this thing. I'll link you to it in the folks below. It's also my favorite short story in this series. So I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun stuff. It's very funny in a lot of dark comedic ways. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the first couple of things. That I also just went back and reread the third short story, which is only a fast 4.5 pages long. It's really more connective tissue and more like a chapter out of a book than a proper short story. That sets up this short story, about 27 pages long. Read it last night for the second time and definitely enjoyed it. So now I'm going to do my review of this 27-page short story for you folks. Now I'm only going to be giving this a 7 out of 10. And this is a guy who's won Hugos. The series has won Hugos, he's also won Stokers in the horror genre, and he's won a lot of science fiction. He's one of the most accredited and awarded authors of all time, but this is really just a 7 out of 10. And my major issue with it is its central conceit, and there's way too much description. Not enough plot. So what's happening is that our two main characters, Gray Mouser and Fafhrd, are at sea. They have, after hitting that connective tissue happens in the previous short story from Lean Times in Lankhmar, which had them in Lankhmar, the giant city that dominates the plain. And then they have arrived at a place that Fafhrd says that, according to the tradition of his people that do a lot of like raiding and pirating and pillaging, he has up in the north, he's sort of a Viking, sort of a version of person, a giant person, and so forth. Anyway, according to his people, this is the 7th day of the 7th month of the 7th year when the Sea King leaves his people behind in order to do some stuff. And so this is the day that has been set aside that if you are a clever person, you can have sex with his women. And so he's brushing his hair. He is, unlike normal, he's taking care of his pictures and so forth. And then there is a tunnel in the water that him and Gray Mouser will take down to try to find the Sea King's women to have sex with them. So that is the key sort of stuff in the story and the key concept of what's happening. And that's 27 pages long, right? Doesn't that feel long? And there's way too much description of the underground realm and what they're doing and what they're seeing and so forth, and not that much actual plot. That's another reason why it's getting dropped down to there's too much talking and not enough working and seeing. So that's another issue that I have with the plot. Anyway, those are the two issues that I have with it, and that's why I'm giving it a 7. It's still well written, right? This guy's doing well. But anyway, the first short story by this series was published in 1939 called Two-Sided Adventure, which I did a review for. It's been republished in this collection and others as The Jewels in the Forest. So you can find it there. Also, he died in 1992, and his first short story actually was Two-Sided Adventure. So he's written and been published in every decade from the 30s to the 90s, and he's read in science fiction, horror, and science fiction and fantasy for you folks. So 3 separate genres that all are reviewed by this channel. So anyway, so he's definitely somebody who's beloved and awarded. As a reminder, the channel of my YouTube channel is the title is The Worst Thing About New Books, a quote by a French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that they kept us from reading the old ones. And so this guy who's published decades ago, or in this case a lot longer. He's definitely somebody who was a key part. And we might have heard of Fritz Leiber, but never actually read him, or you might have heard of the series because of how impactful it is on modern fantasy, but never actually had a chance to sit down and read it, right? So I'd like to go back and read these things and these classics and so forth for people and rediscover a lot of these hidden gems, if you will. In addition to the 5 short stories that I reviewed of this, I also went back and reread 2 short stories, one in the science fiction genre, which is in the Hall of Fame, according to the Science Fiction Writers of America, that published a collection of Hall of Fame short stories. And then also, I read a short story in the horror genre in the Cthulhu mythos, in the Octobers that I dedicate to the Cthulhu mythos in the horror genre. And since he was an acolyte of Lovecraft and wrote with him a lot before his death in 1937, that also makes sense. And I'm sure that Lovecraft would have been happy to have seen how successful his career has been. He was a working writer. He was not making a whole lot of that money. So, for example, he would work on his kitchen table rather than having a study with his typewriters and such. He just wasn't making a lot of money. When other writers would visit, they'd be like, "Wow, this is the squalor that you live in." He was definitely a man of the world for you folks. Anyway, if you read modern fantasy, you have to read Fritz Leiber, and particularly this series, because of how impactful it is on modern fantasy. For example, the Thieves Guild concept comes from this. These 2 characters are thieves, and their abilities are also key ones in modern thieves. Also, the big giant city of Lankhmar that dominates the plain, and it's this seedy city with Horror Street and the Plaza of Dark Delights and stuff like that. Definitely is the seedy, darker side of life, and that definitely feels like a modern sort of take too. So if your modern fantasy series or video game or book or role-playing game or whatever has this big giant city that's this seedy place, that also takes its umbrage from this. In the 1979 first edition Dungeon Master's Manual, the co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, listed this as one of the key influences on the game. And through that, modern fantasy, because it's been one of the key influences of modern fantasy. For you folks. Also, it was a D&D campaign, so if you played that game or played that campaign, you would know about that in the 80s. So anyway, there you are. That is Fritz Leiber's When the Sea King is Away. And this, again, is a 27-page short story. It took me about 57 minutes for me to read it last night for the second time. So I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read it? If so, what'd you think about it? Let's talk about in the comments below. If you want to disagree with my 7 out of 10, I think it's higher or lower, you want to talk about spoilers or the ending, let's do it. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.